Good morning, everyone. Today we are beginning a very important topic from ancient Indian historiography, the nationalist approach and its contribution. Now, many students think history is just about dates, dynasties, and events. But UPSC is not testing memory alone. It is testing your understanding of interpretations. This topic helps you answer questions like why different historians write different histories of the same period, how politics influences history writing, can history ever be neutral? So, when you understand this topic properly, you are not just preparing for GS-1, you are developing the analytical ability UPSC expects from a future administrator. Before we discuss the nationalist approach, we must clearly understand one concept: historiography. Historiography does not mean history. It means the study of how history is written. When we study historiography, we ask, who wrote this history? In which time period? With what ideological purpose? History is not the past itself. It is a reconstruction of the past based on limited sources and human interpretation. Therefore, ancient Indian history tells us not only about ancient India, but also about the mindset of the historian writing it. This is why historiography is crucial for UPSC mains answers. Now let us understand why ancient Indian history became so controversial. The main reason is simple. India was under colonial rule when its history was first systematically written. Most early historians of India were British administrators, missionaries, and colonial scholars. Their objective was not purely academic. History was used to justify British rule. Indian society was presented as backward, static, and politically incapable. This narrative created an impression that India always needed external rulers to maintain order. Such history writing was not accidental. It was deeply political. Let us now understand one of the most influential frameworks behind colonial history writing: Orientalism. Orientalism was a Western way of looking at Eastern societies, including India. At first glance, it appeared appreciative, even respectful. But in reality, it was deeply condescending. India was portrayed as spiritually rich, but intellectually weak, philosophical, but not scientific, religious, but not rational. Indian civilization was reduced mainly to Vedas, philosophy, and mysticism. Political institutions, economic systems, and social changes were largely ignored. The hidden assumption was that India was a land of ideas, not action, faith, not governance. This interpretation conveniently supported colonial dominance. Now, we must ask an uncomfortable but necessary question: why was India shown in this manner? Colonial history writing had a clear political purpose. If Indians were shown as disorganized, passive, and politically immature, then British rule could be projected as necessary, benevolent, and civilizing. This is why Indian history was often written as a story of constant invasions, internal weakness, and lack of unity. The message was subtle but powerful. Indians were never capable of ruling themselves. Thus, history became an instrument of colonial legitimacy, not truth. Such interpretations did not remain confined to books. They deeply affected the Indian mind. Colonial education systems taught Indians that their past was inferior, their institutions were primitive, and their society was stagnant. Over time, this created an inferiority complex, loss of historical confidence, and acceptance of colonial dominance as natural. History, therefore, became a tool of mental subjugation. And once a society starts believing that it has always been weak, resistance becomes extremely difficult. This psychological impact explains why rewriting history became a national necessity. By the late 19th century, Indian society was undergoing a major transformation. Western education had created a new class of lawyers, teachers, journalists, and scholars. These educated Indians began to question colonial authority, not only politically, but intellectually. They started asking, why is our past portrayed as inferior? Why are we taught that India never had political institutions? Why is our civilization shown as stagnant? This growing awareness marked the birth of Indian national consciousness. History was no longer seen as a neutral subject. It became a field of ideological struggle. Nationalist thinkers soon realized something very important. Political freedom cannot be achieved without intellectual freedom. If Indians continued to believe they were historically weak, incapable of governance, and dependent on foreign rule, then independence would remain only a dream. Therefore, history had to be reclaimed. Nationalist historians decided to re examine ancient texts, reinterpret archaeological evidence, and challenge colonial assumptions. History was transformed into a weapon of resistance used to restore dignity and self confidence. This intellectual movement gave rise to what we now call the Nationalist School of Indian Historiography. The central belief of this school was simple: a nation must control the interpretation of its own past. Nationalist historians aim to highlight India's political traditions, emphasize cultural and scientific achievements, and prove that Indian civilization was dynamic and capable. Their purpose was not merely academic, it was nation building. However, as we will see later, this approach had both strengths and weaknesses.